Well, once again, good morning, grace and peace to you. As I said earlier, my name is Kyle Reynolds. I'm the pastor at Common Grace, and I'm so glad that you're worshiping with us this morning. If you would take a moment to comment, whether you're watching this live or you're watching it later, we would love to know that you're worshiping with us and love to celebrate that you're here in the midst of this. A couple of announcements as we begin. As Mona said, we're tremendously excited about this new sermon series. We're excited with what's happening with our neighborhood VBSs as more than 100 students are participating in that. And so continue to be in prayer throughout the month of July and probably into early August as we literally have students from across the country participating in this through our broader church community. That's just so exciting. And we're so pleased to begin this series today looking at some of those same ideas. The last thing that I want to say is I really want to encourage you to take a moment to participate in the survey around worship that Grace Woods, our pastoral intern, has put together. There's a link in the description of this video. It literally will take you about 4 minutes to do. There's a video of a brief part of a worship service, and then it just asks you to respond to some of your preferences around that. And each person who's watching this, each person in your family can participate in that. Today is the last day to do it. So we would love for you to do that right away and participate in that. That's super helpful for us. So as Mona said, this morning we're beginning a new series called Focus, and we've heard a little bit about what that means for the children's ministry folks, and I want to talk a little bit about what I think I understand that to mean for us. We're continuing some of the same themes and some of the same ideas and some of the same scriptures that they're using in the VBS and the summer curriculums for the students, but I think they're applicable to all of us in a variety of ways, and so we'll be using some of that same content in different ways. And this is what I want us to focus on together. What are the ways that we can help grow our spiritual lives, grow our faith in the midst of where we find ourselves right now? How can we focus on our faith in the busyness that we find ourselves in? And that's not this moment, that's all moments. We continually find ourselves pulled in directions. How can we grow in our faith? What can we focus on to help us grow in our faith now? And so we'll look at different practices, different ways of helping to develop our faith in the midst of any season of life. And so that's what we're going to look at over these next few weeks. And this morning, I want us to focus on nature. What does it mean to connect with God through nature, to be in nature in such a way that we can experience God and God's presence and God's glory and God's goodness? And so that's what I want to talk about this morning. You heard Mona read during the children's piece from Romans 1:20, talking about the way that all of creation sort of speaks to God's goodness. And so that's one piece that we bring into this conversation. And then I want to read from Psalm 19, just the first half of the Psalm that talks a bit more about this idea of what creation means for us as a people of faith. And so I'm going to read these verses again. I think it's about the first half of Psalm 19. I invite you to hear these words. The heavens declare the glory of God. The skies proclaim the work of God's hands. Day after day they pour forth speech. Night after night they reveal knowledge. They have no speech. They use no words. No sound is heard from them. Yet their voice goes out into all the earth, their words to the end of the world. In the heavens, God has pitched a tent for the sun. It's like a bridegroom coming out of his chamber, like a champion rejoicing to run his course. It rises in one end of the heaven and it makes its circuit to the other. Nothing is deprived of its warmth. May God add blessing to our reading and understanding of these words this morning. So growing up, I would often spend time down near a creek, and that's actually where I am right now. Across the street from my house, there was this large pond, and this creek flows off of the pond, and I would be standing in water if we'd had very much rain recently, but it's dry at this particular moment. And then there are these woods over here, and on the other side of these woods, I think it's the same creek that goes around, and it's a little bit deeper over there. And these woods and this creek and that creek, and there's a waterfall right behind the camera. We used to spend all day here during the summer, me and some of my friends. And so we would come down here in the morning after breakfast, and oftentimes would stay through most of the day, and we would We would play in the water and we would climb in the trees and we would catch frogs and snakes and chase after birds and squirrels and all of that. And in my late elementary years, this was a place where I did a lot of growing. I spent a lot of time connecting with friends. I spent a lot of time reflecting, and we would explore this, and we would sometimes gather things that people had discarded back here. But so many formative experiences in my life come right here where we're standing right now. And when I was in this place, it was like a freedom from the house where I live. Not that there was anything wrong with it, but to get out and to experience something even in this relatively small plot of land that was bigger than myself, that was more complex than what I sometimes understood, to realize my place in the midst of nature and creation, and to spend time in laughter and reflecting on that. It's just a great experience. This is a place, even to this day, that brings back memories for me. It's a place that I can breathe deeply, and there is a smell that creeks have. And no matter where I am, if I happen past that, it brings me back to this place and to those moments growing up. Do you have that place? Was there a place when you were growing up that you went to? Maybe it was far away. Maybe it was a cabin in the woods that you went with family, or maybe it was someplace near your grandparents, but maybe there was a field in your neighborhood or the neighborhood next to you. Was there a place that you would go that allowed you to breathe deeply, to sort of realize the bigness of the world and your smallness, and yet feel comfortable and safe in that space? What about now? Do you have that kind of place now in your life? A place that you go, again, maybe it's far away, but maybe it's a park. Maybe it's as close as your own backyard. Maybe it's a pond or a lake that you walk around. Do you have a place right now that you go to connect with nature, to connect with God and nature? We know how important this is for us. You saw all of the same reports I did during the stay-at-home orders that told us how important it was that we safely get outside, that we go for walks, that we spend time in a park, that we do something, that we connect, that we get sun on our skin. We know how important that is for us. We know that we need that kind of thing. And some of us know now that we need that even more than we did before the stay-at-home orders and COVID hit. We know how much we need that kind of thing. I was laughing as I was preparing for this sermon. I was thinking about one of the funniest pictures that I saw on social media in the midst of all of the stay-at-home orders and the uncertainty was a picture. In Italy, they locked down, and they kind of really locked down. Maybe we didn't, but they were like really serious. You had to stay home. And one of the few excuses that you could have to be out and about was if you were walking a pet. And so this photo was of a man, and it looked like getting a ticket or a citation from some Italian police officers, but he was walking and he had this bowl and it had a goldfish in it. I think his excuse was that he was walking his goldfish. Apparently that wasn't sufficient for the authorities there. But we know we need outdoors. We need to connect with something bigger than ourselves. We need space to breathe in order for us to be well, in order for us to be healthy, in order for us to really to stay sane. I think sometimes that's what it felt like we needed. And all of those things are true. And we read our scripture this morning, and it says that our need for nature, our need to connect with the outdoors, goes beyond that. Because in those first couple of verses, what do the scriptures say? It says, "The heavens declare the glory of God, the skies proclaim the works of God's hands. Day after day they pour forth speech, night after night they reveal knowledge." It says that all of this that's around us, the clear skies and the day and the night that we've had, the moon that was the full moon that we had last week, did you notice that? All of that points to the goodness and the glory of God. And friends, I think we need to be reminded of that. We need to be aware. We need to hear, as I'm standing in this moment and I'm hearing birds and I'm hearing the water trickle behind us and I'm hearing the crickets, we need to hear that symphony. that's going on all around us, all of this amazing beauty that's so far beyond our comprehension. It points to the glory and to the goodness of God. And I think that's so critical for us to understand. We need to be reminded of that. But this is what's interesting. The scripture continues on, verse 3. It says, so let's revisit. The heavens declare, skies proclaim, they pour forth speech, they reveal knowledge. And then verse 3 says this: they have no speech, they use no words, no sound is heard from them. Yet their voice goes into all the earth, their words to the end of the world. And that contradiction, I think, is incredibly important, and I think it means a lot of things. First of all, it means that what we're reading in this text, it's poetry, it's art, it's song. This is a hymn of praise that we're being invited to participate in. And so it uses phrases and ideas that don't always make sense in the way that music and melody does from time to time. Yes, they speak, they proclaim, they say, they share knowledge, and yet they do it without voice, silently, without making a sound. There's a contradiction in there, and that's the beauty of art. That's the beauty of the poetry. But I think it also speaks to another reality, and that's, friends, that you and I, we're people who are often in a hurry. We're people who are often busy, and we're people who often don't notice the nature around us, don't notice the sounds, don't notice the blue of the sky, the clear of the night, the green of the grass and the trees. We don't notice the sounds of the animals that surround us all of the time. As I was preparing for this, I read from a commentator named Susan Johnson, and she said this: it's true that God's glory in nature is pervasive and enveloping, yet sometimes it is imperceptible. What does that mean? It's pervasive and it's enveloping, yet it's sometimes imperceptible. How can both of those be true? They can both be true because oftentimes when we don't take time, when we don't take pause, when we don't intentionally perceive what is around us, we completely miss it. So that which is pervasive and all around us completely misses our radar. We get in these hurries, and that which is all around us becomes imperceptible. And yet, that's not the end of the story. Those last 2.5 verses, beginning the latter part of verse 4. In the heavens, God has pitched a tent for the sun. It's like a bridegroom coming out of his chamber, like a champion rejoicing to run his course. It rises on one end of the heavens and it makes its circuit to the other. Then this last line is so important. Nothing is deprived of its warmth. Friends, oftentimes that's how God's grace and mercy works. Whether we acknowledge it, whether we notice it, whether we take notice of it, whether we respond to it, it's still there. It doesn't go away. God's grace doesn't go away. The sun, whether we notice it or not, sheds its warmth on everyone. And certainly we've seen that almost to a problematic level over these last few weeks as day after day has been hot. But perhaps that is a reminder for us, friends, that we can't move beyond it, whether we notice it or not. God's grace and mercy and glory that's all around us is on display. Again, back to Susan Johnson, she said, the glory of God isn't always comprehended, but I love this, but to miss it is not to be missed by it. I want to say that again. The glory of God is not always comprehended by us, but just because we miss it doesn't mean we're missed by it. God's glory continues to bless us and surround us. And I love that reminder, but we need to cultivate an awareness of that. Because as I was thinking about this, and as I was writing this sermon throughout the week, the fact of the matter is that there were several times I was sitting in my office and I have a big window and it looks out, and the green of the grass and the blue of the sky and the sun was shining. And I kept thinking over and over, like, it's really simple, but I wonder how hot it is outside. And I was this far, the glass is about this thick. I was this far from being outside. But the truth is, friends, that I think we often miss experiencing, not just seeing, not letting someone else describe it for us, not counting on somebody else's perception of it, but we often miss experiencing God's glory by this much. We get in the walls that we build for ourselves, we get in our cars, we get in the boxes we put around ourselves, and we insulate ourselves from all of the goodness and the glory around us, and we don't even notice it. I kept asking myself this week, I wonder how warm it is. I would come in the morning and leave early evening, and it's like I didn't even know how hot it was in the middle of the day. But all of it together, the scripture, it's a reminder that the symphony, that the story, that the song, that the chorus, it's ongoing, it's being sung. And then it's up to you and I. What do we do about that? How do we respond to that? Do we decide to participate and be a part of it? Or do we continue to miss it by that much? That's the question for us today. As I was thinking about that, I was remembering back in junior high, I used to be a part of a traveling choir, which is another way of saying back in junior high, I used to be able to sing. But we would go from place to place around the country in the summer for 10 days, 2 weeks, and we would sing at all of these different places. And it was an incredible experience, but one of the things that sticks with me the most is that on the buses, as we would drive from city to city, we would often break out into song. And we wouldn't break out into good, proper choral song. No, we would break out into good, proper rock and roll. Like Bohemian Rhapsody, that's the one that I remember the most. And so what would happen on the bus is you would have one side of the bus singing one part and one side of the bus singing the other. Let him go, we will not let him go, let him go back. We would have this. And here was the thing. When somebody would plug in, because you actually had to plug in the speaker to the CD player, and you had to put the actual CD disc into the CD player, and all of those things required batteries. But somebody would do that, and they'd turn their little 2.5 watt speaker on, and you couldn't hear it halfway up the bus. But when somebody did it and somebody hit play, it meant that you had two choices. Either you could join in singing back and forth with one another, you could be a part of it, or you could sit there and pretend it wasn't happening, but you weren't going to stop it. And friends, that's what I think about with this. We can participate. We can be a part of it. We can join in the chorus, join in the reflection. We can respond and give thanks for the glory of God that is all around us, or we can miss it by that much. Either way, the skies are proclaiming, nature is declaring the glory of God all around us. And it's like that moment in a wedding when the doors open and the bride begins to walk down the aisle. What happens? Everybody stands up. In that moment, that palpable moment that we feel, that we experience, you can't not stand. You can't just stay seated. You have to be a part. And friends, when we're able to slow down enough, when we're able to be present in nature, when we're able to allow God to speak to us, to just be in awe of the trees that grow through rocks and the vines that wrap around them and the bugs that are flying all around. I think we can't do anything but stand. We can't do anything but join in the chorus. We can't do anything, help ourselves, but to be gracious for all that's going on around us. So in the week ahead, what I want to challenge you to do is to spend some time, some intentional time out in nature. And again, that can be as close as your backyard. That can be in a walking around your neighborhood. That can be in a park. I've loved hearing from a friend who, ever since he's had to stay home from work, he's gone out to Olathe Lake to walk around it. And he started his mornings that way, and how meaningful that's been for him. I want to invite you to be intentional, to be aware, to listen, to allow yourself to experience the glory of God that is being proclaimed all around us. Friends, it's happening. The invitation is to join in all that's going on. So my challenge, take a hike. Spend some time outside. Be intentional about it. respond to the amazing things that are going on around you. Trust that God is going to speak to you in the midst of that. I want to end with one last story. Sometimes, and maybe this is a word of advisement, I guess. Maybe changing your environment will help with some of that. So, when I was living in Pietermaritzburg, South Africa, a beautiful country, but that particular city is kind of nestled in the mountains. And so all around it, there are these mountains. And then in this valley is the city. And that's where I got to live for a couple of months. And I'm not exaggerating when I say that most every morning when I woke up and I would be having my coffee and I would look outside and I would see the mountains 360 degrees around us, I would just begin to laugh. Because when you think about the enormity of it all, and when you're not around that, when you're growing up, and you think about the beauty of it and the magnitude, I just couldn't help but laugh. I just couldn't help but be in awe. And friends, that's my hope for you in this week ahead. That as you take some moments to pause, as you take some time with God and nature, as you work to focus on how it is that God is speaking through nature, that it will build your faith and that you'll join in the chorus of gratitude for God's glory that is all around us. So may it always be. Amen.
Thanks for watching. If you would like to donate to the church, click the link below. For service times, campus locations, and any other info, you can visit graceumc.church.